Got a quick screencast here to show you some of the resources we've been using at Sheboygan Falls High School for UDL lesson planning. This is a public Canvas page that we created for a presentation at the Wisconsin Dells, and it shows you right off the bat here a graphic that represents our UDL lesson planning process. Now, we took this graphic and adapted it from an article by Kavita Rao and Grace Mio that is linked and cited below. But it does show you the different steps involved in our planning process. Step 1, clarity. This is about creating those learning goals that are so important. Step 2, we're calling it transparency, where we're determining assessment expectations and sharing those early with students. Steps 3 and 4, flexibility of design of materials and methods. And then the last part, teaching the actual lesson, reflecting and collaborating with others to improve our practice. Again, that graphic up top, we didn't take it exactly from this article, but we did adapt it. And I would highly recommend this article linked below as a read if you're starting in UDL lesson planning. Underneath, we've got a page that represents each part of the lesson planning process, and then also our next steps as a district, and I'll show you that in a second, and UDL resources that our district has. So if I click here on goal statements, and this is the first part of the planning process, for each page, it has the explanation of why it's important for UDL, that particular step in the process, and then how we address it in our lesson planner, in the document that teachers work with. Underneath, we've got examples of this particular part of the process from a 5th grade science teacher with a unit on gravity, and we've got a screencast of that part of the process where she explains as well. Underneath, we've embedded this part of the planner where we've got the standard, the breakdown of the language, and the creation of student goals. As I move forward here through the lesson planning process, we have our second page, which is about assessment expectations. Again, up top, it says why they're important to UDL, and then underneath, how we address them in our particular planner. Like the previous page, we've got a slideshow from one teacher example, and then a screencast giving a little bit more explanation about that example. And then underneath, our part of the planner that deals with assessment expectations. It's basically taking that learning target and then rubricing it, defining what you want from students early on in the process so that, again, you've created a goal that makes the target clear and assessment expectations that provide transparency for the student for what you're actually trying to do. As we move to the next step, we're looking at the flexibility of design of materials and methods. Again, up top, it talks about why it's important to UDL. I mean, obviously, we're creating a flexible environment to overcome barriers for students. And then underneath, it says how we address that in our particular planner. Again, the teacher example is embedded here in the screencast. And underneath, we have the planner, this part of the planner that deals with flexible materials and methods. It contains the checkpoints from CAST. It contains a spot where the teacher can explain the checkpoint that they're addressing and how they've addressed it and what they're hoping to gain by addressing it in that way. As we move forward to the next part, this is our district, or this is the teach and reflect part. After each lesson that we do in a quarter, and we require teachers to do at least one, at least that's what we started with. We have them reflect on practice. We have them answer questions and discuss with their peers in the hopes that they can improve on the process that they've already started. As we move forward to the next part of this, what we've got here is our district's next steps. This year, we really moved away from an individual lesson planner and went to a unit planner, and our focus was just on accessibility, and these bullet points explain that. We embedded one of our new unit planners underneath, and this was really part of our learning where we figured out early on that lessons and goals were important, but really what you were trying to do is change the environment. And you might have to start with lessons, but eventually you're looking at units and environment, and the unit planner was a way to address that. So in this unit, we have day 1, the target, the activity summary, and the predictable support. Here you have the checkpoint that addresses, and we required all teachers in our district to do at least one unit planner this year focused on accessibility. I'm going to go to the last thing here to go back to the homepage and show you some of the UDL resources that we have here. So if I go back to the homepage and I click on resources, it brings up our resource page where we have our district's list of non-negotiables, a link to the Dive in UDL website, which is a phenomenal resource and a phenomenal book to teach others about UDL. We've got a video from Allison Posey visiting our district in 2017 as a part of our launch for UDL. As we move down, we've got the ever popular Myth of the Average video, which explains the philosophical ideas behind universal design. Then we've got a link to the guidelines on CAST's website. The teacher progression rubric that was provided by CAST, so teachers can get an idea of where they are at. We've got one little screencast here on how to create assessment expectations from a goal in our planner. Then we have a link to our UDL lesson planner here. And that's something we created a year and a half ago, a UDL exemplar course, where we had teachers in our district volunteer to create exemplar units. And they are linked here in another public Canvas course. The last thing I'll do here before I end is look at our planner as a whole. You've seen pieces of it embedded throughout this screencast. Here it is with all the steps that you saw represented, starting with the goals and standards, going into assessment expectations, and then looking at the flexible materials and methods. And again, we created this based on the article from Kavita Rao and Grace Mio that I referenced earlier, kind of their ideas around UDL. That's where we started. And we used some of the images from the UDL website, Dive into UDL website, those little thumbnail images that you see, to help represent to teachers what exactly the area was they were focusing on. We really like those visual supports. That's the entire screencast. I know it's a lot, but those are some of the resources we've used in the last 2 years. And again, this was part of a presentation that we gave at the Wisconsin Dells in February this year. Thanks. If you have any questions, just let me know.